What's up, everyone? So today I'm going to do a post talking about why B12 does not give you energy. Okay, it's a common misconception, and I'll talk about where all that comes from. So first off, we get energy from if we're breaking down, let's say glucose, we can get energy from fatty acids. It's a different process, but let's talk about the process if we're getting it from glucose, because there's four distinct things that happen. You have something called glycolysis, which is where you break glucose down into energy, and then some other stuff you'll make from that process. And then you'll use that stuff, if you have oxygen available, to go into what's called a transitional phase or intermediate step, which that part is actually taking place in the mitochondria, and the rest of it will. And we use what we make in that intermediate step to go into what's called the Krebs cycle. Okay, we go around the Krebs cycle, we make a whole bunch of products. We're going to take a lot of those products that we make. Some of it's going to be ATP, which is your cellular source of energy. You got 2 from glycolysis. You're going to get 2 from the Krebs cycle. Then you're going to take these other products that's called NAD and FADH2. You actually need niacin for NADH, and you need riboflavin which is B2, for FADH2. So those nutrients are necessary for energy production. Okay, so we take those and we put it into this last process called oxidative phosphorylation. These are very big words. We don't really care too much about what they mean at the moment, right? That's not the focus of this, is to understand why B12 is not giving you energy. Anyway, with oxidative phosphorylation, we use those products to get 28 ATP, and we have a total of 32 from 1 glucose. None of those processes is B12 found, or any other energy processes. It doesn't matter what we're breaking down for energy, but if we're regardless of what we're doing, we're not using, to get ATP, which is our cellular source of energy, you're not using B12. Now that said, B12 is a super important nutrient. It is necessary for DNA production. It is necessary to make red blood cells, for neurons, which are your nerve cells. In fact, long-term deficiencies of B12 cause permanent nerve damage. So you definitely want to make sure you're replete in your vitamin B12. But that being said, it is very uncommon to have a deficiency, or at least a dietary deficiency, in B12. We have it enriched in grains and breads and different cereals and foods and things like that. So the chances of you, if you're not living in an impoverished area, the chance of you having a B12 deficiency is very rare. Now there is something called pernicious anemia, and that is where, let me use some models here. In order to absorb B12, 99% of B12, you need a protein called intrinsic factor to absorb it. You can absorb about 1% passively without intrinsic factor. So if this is intrinsic factor here, okay, this is the protein. We make this in the stomach. We make it in cells called parietal cells in the stomach. And what it's going to do, if this is B12, it's going to take it and it's going to help shuttle it across the membrane or the intestinal wall and into the bloodstream, okay? You need intrinsic factor to absorb 99% of your B12. That's takeaway there. So if you're not producing intrinsic factor, you have something called pernicious anemia. It could be due to destruction of stomach cells by something like atrophic gastritis, which is usually autoimmune, which means your own body's destroying those cells. You can, if you have the gastric bypass, that will regular sized stomach into this little teeny stomach. You're either not producing intrinsic factor or you're not producing very much. So you're gonna, these things can lead to B12 deficiencies. In those cases, okay, where you have a diagnosed B12 deficiency, you should be taking B12, okay? Pernicious anemia, usually it's recommended to take the B12 shots. You can do maintenance daily with sublingual, things like that, but definitely gotta get your B12 levels back up to normal as quick as possible. B12 does store in the body. It stores in the liver. It's the only water-soluble vitamin that actually stores in the body. So it's very easy to test. And again, if you're deficient in it, then there's nothing wrong with getting B12 shots. If you are not, it's placebo, because there's no biochemical process in the entire body where B12 is used for energy. So the misconception comes, well, what did I say they make? They make red blood cells, or you need it to make red blood cells. So if you were deficient in B12, you would not efficiently make your red blood cells. So you would be deficient in red blood cells, right? Red blood cells carry oxygen. That means you would have a deficiency of oxygen getting to the tissues. It would cause fatigue. All anemias cause fatigue. Pernicious anemia being the lack of intrinsic factor causing a decrease in B12. That is also a type of anemia. So if we fix that, we give you B12, your energy levels are going to go up. if you now are making enough red blood cells. Okay, so that's where it all originated from. But as far as biochemistry, we don't need to be giving B12 shots to someone that's not diagnosed with pernicious anemia or any other cause of B12 deficiency. One other thing I want to say before I go, I'm hoping you can see this when I show it to you. There are vitamins. Let's see if we can see this. I can't see close with my glasses, but this right here is the intermediate step, and this circle right there is the Krebs cycle, okay? And if we look down, where is it? If we look right down there, we also see B1, 2, 3, 5 lipoic acid, B1, 2, 3, 5 lipoic acid. B1 is not thiamine, B2 is riboflavin, B3 is niacin, and B5 is pantothenic acid. So these nutrients are all playing a role. If you look at some of the other places, there's magnesium and manganese, and there's niacin again. And so you have a number of nutrients, enzymes, coenzymes, actually there's enzymes too, coenzymes and minerals, vitamins, all this stuff is playing into all of these processes. And yet B12 is nowhere to be found. So it is important to be replete in your nutrients. However, getting B12 for energy, it's just not going to work. If you have any questions, let me know. Stay strong. I'll see you next time.